Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice of radio, though as you can tell, third video today, still very croaky. But what are you going to do, ladies and gentlemen? New cards are being revealed. I'm here for you. Now, this one's a Spiritomb, and here's the thing, right? Spiritomb tends to be interesting. They're not powerhouse cards that win you games. But the one from Arceus, we talked about this in our Sabeldonk video just yesterday, had the ability which turned off item cards while it was in the active. That was pretty good. The one from Legendary Treasures stopped A-Spec trainer cards. That was pretty useful. And this one as well is a very useful card. It's not a build a deck around it, smash and win kind of card, but it will support other Pokemon to be exactly that. I believe these are being revealed at a big tournament over in Tokyo today, which is why we've had 3 of them, revealed in a very similar manner, and of course it has been translated by the lovely David Hochmann, who I believe is actually there. So, Spiritomb then. Well, first thing to note here, it's not got great HP. It's got 70 HP, but then again it's a Spiritomb, they don't tend to have big HPs. One thing that is really nice, there's no weakness here, because it's a ghost Pokemon, and ghost Pokemon often don't have a weakness in the Pokemon trading card game. Similarly, it doesn't have a resistance, which is to be expected, and a retreat cost of 1. I mean, look, a skateboard is a thing, and it attacks for a single energy. So, retreat cost of 1 here kind of makes perfect sense, to be perfectly honest with you. It's pretty good. You shouldn't be too upset. To be honest, a lack of weakness would be better if it wasn't for the fact that you had 70 HP, but you can't have it all. One thing that I really love about this, we just a couple hours ago looked at Black Market Prism Star, the ridiculous new card, which gives up 1 fewer prize to a Darkness Pokemon when it gets KO'd if it's got a Darkness energy attached. So for all Darkness Pokemon in the future, and this is very much one of them, if you pop a Darkness energy on here and you get that stadium down, Spiritomb doesn't give up a prize. And if you can use this for a couple turns to set up without giving up a prize, that's a little bit dumb. Now, it is a Darkness Pokemon, so you've got Devoured, Field, don't worry about it, ladies and gentlemen. And you're hitting weakness on stuff like Bayonet, don't worry about it, ladies and gentlemen. It's not important, it's not an attacker. Now, it does have an attack for 1 colourless energy that does 20 damage, and look, in an emergency, maybe this works. Maybe you whack a Choice Band on there and it does 50, and maybe you're hitting for weakness and it does 100. So a Bayonet and a Dawnwings Necrozma will be 2-hit KO'd. It's nothing to get excited about, nothing to worry about. It's one of those attacks that if you're playing it for the other attack, maybe occasionally it will be useful. Maybe you'll get some use, maybe you'll attack occasionally with it, but it's not why you play the card. Why you play the card is for the first attack, and the first attack is very, very good indeed. For a single colourless energy, search your deck for 4 Pokemon and discard them. That's nuts. I know it doesn't initially sound like an amazing attack, but it's absolutely over-the-top nuts. It is also a signal that Pokemon will not be giving us a reprint of Battle Compressor. Battle Compressor is still in Expanded, but we ain't getting it back. We did very recently see the new Shuckle card, and the new Shuckle card lets you search your deck for free basic energy and discard them. And now we've got this, that's an ability, whereas it activates when you put it down onto the bench. This is an attack that discards 4 Pokemon from your deck. Now, Battle Compressor is an item card whereby you play it, and you search your deck for any free cards and discard them. And it was nuts good with a million different things, from Blacksmith to get some energy in the discard and then attach them with Blacksmith, or Aqua Patch for the same reason but with an item card, or Vespiquen that did extra damage for each Pokemon you've got in the discard, or Versus Seeker so you can discard a supporter card, then reuse it with Versus Seeker, and certainly if you had both of them in your opening hand, you could choose your supporter. It was great. Clearly, Spiritomb is a much narrower card than Battle Compressor. It can only discard Pokemon from your deck, it cannot discard other cards. But there's so many times we want to discard Pokemon from our deck, I'm not particularly worried that that's all it allows us to do. Let's go for an obvious one. Just earlier today I told you about a new Zoroark. I'll pop a link in the description. And this Zoroark had a phenomenally good attack, which allows you to do 20 damage for each Pokemon in your discard, double as much as Vespiquen, but only up to a maximum of 200. To answer a query I've got from a couple of people, whenever attacks give a maximum damage, that is a maximum base damage for the attack. You can still use stuff like Choice Band or Devoured Field to add to that. So although Zoroark's attack maxes out at 200, with a Choice Band and a Devoured Field, you would then be up to 240. This is lovely. Problem is, you need to get Pokemon in the discard, and in the video I told you about Ultra Ball, and the fact that we can still use that. And I told you about the new Zebstrika, whereby you can once per turn discard your hand and draw 4 new cards. Very, very useful. You search out a bunch of cards, maybe using something like Professor Elm's Lecture, whereby you search for free Pokemon with 60 HP or less and put them in your hand, and then you discard them with Zebstrika. These are all options, but I told you in Expanded, Battle Compressor works for Zoroark, and I said in Standard, we don't have great options. And Zoroark was revealed earlier on today, then there was a break, then this got revealed. Clearly we're being trolled by whoever in Japan is releasing and revealing these cards. They wanted us to think, that's a really good attack, but how are we going to discard the Pokemon? And then they reveal Spiritomb and we're like, oh, that's how we're going to discard the Pokemon. Because make no mistake about it, right, this Spiritomb is phenomenal with that Zoroark. And then obviously if you go into the expanded format, it's phenomenal with Vespiquen. And the thing that must be mentioned here, basic Pokemon, single colourless energy. So generally speaking, these Vespiquen decks are played with Flareon. And then you would play just a few fire energy, so you could then blacksmith them back on, because you would be using stuff like Battle Compressor. Well, that's fine, you can now use that with Spiritomb. And just to be clear, right, just because you've got Battle Compressor for Vespiquen doesn't mean you don't also want Spiritomb. Because that way you're just discarding a whole bunch of Pokemon super quickly and it's nuts. And here's the great thing about Spiritomb. You really want to play 4 of them to maximise your chances of starting. It's very rough maths, but generally speaking, if you play 4, you should start with 1 in roughly half your games. Then you build in stuff like Ultra Ball, and it's very likely that you should be able to find one most games if you want one. But then you're playing 4 of them. What do you do with the other 3? You just search them out. And literally, right, if you're playing a deck like Zoroark or Vespiquen, you can literally just play 4 of these, have 1 to begin with, and then the first time you use this, you search for the other 3 and discard them, plus 1 other card. It's crazy good. Now, it's not the only reason you'd use it, but clearly stuff like Zoroark or Vespiquen is great. And even if you're playing something like a Zoroark GX Zoroark hybrid, you should be playing these so that you can get them in the discard nice and early. But how about the new Giratina, which is coming soon? Now, the new Giratina is great, and the new Giratina is going to transform the game. It's so crazy over the top good. And the ability says that if it's in your discard pile, you can essentially put it onto your bench and put 1 damage counter on each of 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And this is going to be great with a whole bunch of stuff. You can play it with Skyfield and then just use it with Zoroark to do huge damage. Or you can play it with the upcoming Victini, which does 20 damage for each basic Pokemon you've got in play. Or you can play it with Mega Gardevoir, that lets you discard as many Pokemon as you like from your bench, and then you do an extra 10 damage for each 1 discarded. So essentially every turn you discard the Giratina, and then the next turn you bring them back, do some damage, discard them, and so on and so forth. But Giratina is a card that needs to be in the discard pile. Whether you're playing Zoroark, Victini, Giratina, or anything else, you want to be starting with it in the discard pile. That, ladies and gentlemen, is where Spiritomb comes in. And these are not the only uses for it. Yes, stuff like Zoroark and Vespiquen is a phenomenal use. Yes, something like Giratina is a phenomenal use. But there's a whole bunch of stuff like Night March in Expanded. Now, arguably, Night March is consistent enough. But the point I'm making here is we've had a whole bunch of Pokemon over the past many years which have done extra damage or extra stuff depending on Pokemon in your discard pile. How about something like Marshadow GX, which can use the attacks of any basic Pokemon in your discard pile? You need to get them in the discard. Oh look, that's where Spiritomb comes in. And this is going to be one of those cards whereby we're going to keep getting more and more Pokemon that can take advantage of this. Even down to the it's late in the game. You've got 6 cards left in your deck. You desperately need a Guzma. You've got 4 Pokemon, 2 Guzma in your deck. Discard the 4 Pokemon. Your deck is 2 Guzma. You have guaranteed yourself the win the following turn. This is a phenomenal card that, yes, there's some simple uses with stuff like Zoroark and Giratina, which are going to be extremely powerful. But please, do not make the mistake of thinking that's what it's good for, they're the only 2 uses. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, there's plenty more right now, and there will be plenty more in the future. I'm giving it between 4 and 5 Wassies, and there are 2 important appendices here. Appendix 1, we don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. Appendix 2, this could very easily turn out to be a misery score that should be much higher, a tiny bit higher, it doesn't get much higher, especially if we get more Pokemon revealed in the future that can take advantage of it. But I want to hear from you guys. Do you think there are other Pokemon we have that can take advantage of it? Do you think it's as good as I'm saying? Do you think I'm being overly enthusiastic? Do you think this new Zoroark could be good when combined with this? Go nuts. But remember the rule, ladies and gentlemen. Do be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.